So the question today basically is, what is sin? And if you think about it in the context of modern society, you think about something that brings you shame, something that is used to shame other people into you shouldn't do that, or into controlling other people in order to put people into boundaries and to put people into under labels in order to get them to do what you want them to do in order to have that control over them. But I'm going to put this in the context of God. So God is a variety of things to different people, but just so that we're on the same page, in this context, God is love. God is all love, all light, all truth, all life. Most importantly, all life. So if you think about it, from the Catholic perspective, or most religions, you hear that there was some kind of separation between God and human because of sin. And due to that separation of sin, death came into the world. So basically we were immortal, and all of a sudden we became mortal, and now we can die, right? So if God is all life, and you create a separation between humans, because humans are connected to God automatically through our souls, which is life, that means in order for death to appear, you would need to cause that separation between God, or between human and life. And life, in this case, is God. Which means that sin is a separation between God and human. If sin is what brought death into the world. It sounds, sounds a little bit crazy. But if you think about it, like A equals B, but B also equals B, that's when it makes more sense. So we also discuss God as being something else that isn't just life. God is also all love. So sin not only separates us from life, but sin separates us from love, which is why we put a value on not sinning. Because obviously as of right now, we're mortals, so technically, if God was just life, we wouldn't really have anything to lose, because it's like we're already going to die regardless. We can't change that by not sinning. But if you recognize that God is also all love, wouldn't we want to be connected to love in the life that we have right now? Because naturally, as human beings, we're creatures of connection, we're creatures of love. That's literally all that we want to do. In the beginning, we were created simply to be love, right? From the top of our heads to the bottom of our feet. And somehow we ruined that for ourselves. That's why we're caught up in this journey of constantly pursuing love, any kind of love. Love in food, love in people, love in toxic relationships, love in family and friends and money. We pursue a bunch of different things. We call it our passion. But in reality, it's something that's just supposed to fill up that vacancy that was left from the love that we ended up rejecting by sinning. From the love that we continue to reject by continuing to sin. So in order to actually find some kind of satisfaction, some kind of peace, some kind of fulfillment, and not feel like you constantly have to keep running for something, that's the value behind trying to avoid sin, is in order to get that love for yourself. Which is kind of what we're focusing on today, rather than the modern idea of sinning, which is something that brings shame to people, something to shame others, something to control others. It's more like, I care so much about you that I want you to be able to experience love fully. And that's why we're both on this journey together, in order to try to avoid sinning. That's usually the perspective where it was intended to come from. But somehow along the way it got twisted into something that is... the point is basically that the world has painted sin to be something where it's an offense to God. It's I have to avoid stepping on somebody else's toes. I have to avoid offending somebody else because they're too sensitive, because they can't handle it, because I'm too bold, I'm too big, etc., etc., and that makes them feel uncomfortable kind of thing, right? But in reality, that's just a deception that's been created out of the insecurity of society, so forth and so on, whatever. But basically, the sin, the perspective of sin that we're focusing on is the fact that it's also shooting ourselves in the foot. Not only is it offending somebody else, but it's offending ourselves. Because if God is all love, God is all light, basically everything that we possibly want, and sin is a separation from God, then basically we're separating ourselves from love, from everything that we could possibly want, right? That's where it becomes an issue, because now it's affecting us in a negative way, right? Now you're self-sabotaging. Naturally, we have self-sabotaging tendencies. That's the reason that it's hard not to sin. That's what makes it so much a flesh against spirit. It's not a me against myself, it's a flesh against spirit. Because our flesh wants to die, basically. You know, it's self-sabotaging all the time, but we have to make sure that we have our best interest in mind. By having our best interest in mind, we're going to focus on not sinning in order to be able to have that love, in order to be able to have that satisfaction, to embrace it properly, right? Instead of these other toxic versions of it, these counterfeits of it, like money, sex, drugs, etc. Like the typical things, right? A way that I like to think about it, because it's a little bit strange, is, for example, if God is love, say God is the heart, God is life, God is the heart of the body, and all of us are different little parts of the body. You're the thumb, someone else is an index finger, I'm the pinky, okay? So as a pinky, if I don't do my part well, say, I don't know, we're picking up an apple or something, I don't do my part well, now all of a sudden the thumb is going to be mad at me because I didn't do my part well. Because in this case, I sinned, I offended, I made an offense against the heart, I made an offense against life. I was like, yeah, you know what? Y'all go ahead and carry that apple however y'all want to do it. I'm not going to participate because I don't feel like it. So now I have decided to be some kind of weight, some kind of source of uncomfortability for the thumb and the rest of the hand. We had one job, to pick up an apple. And now they can't pick up the apple because I as a pinky chose not to. That's kind of how the, I guess they call it the body of God works. Something that is more of my focus on this is, for example, God is life, God is the heart, right? I'm the pinky. God keeps pumping blood in order to keep all of the fingers alive, right? All of our human beings alive. And then he just wants that connection. Of course he wants his pinky. I'm part of the body. He's not just gonna like discard me as a pinky. No, I'm part of his body as well, right? But say I as a pinky say, you know what? I'm getting tired of all this blood coming to me. I'm getting tired of being part of a hand and having to constantly do everything that the hand wants me to do. Just because I'm part of it, just because I'm a pinky, right? What if I want to go be a pinky by myself instead of being a part of a hand, instead of being a part of the community of God, you know, etc., right? It's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop accepting those blood. So like I said, then it's like, you know what? I'm going to stop accepting these blood cells and I'm just going to go live my own pinky life, right? Eventually. So eventually, I start off with rejecting 1 blood cell, 2 blood cells, 3 blood cells, you know, I'm out here. And the heart keeps pumping blood even though I'm rejecting all those blood cells, all that love from the heart, from God, you know? But the heart still appreciates me because I'm still part of the body, okay? It's not like, oh, you're not accepting blood cells once? Perfect. Cut you off, you know? It's not like that. So then I, as a pinky, keep rejecting those blood cells. A week later, I'm purple, right? Because I'm cutting myself from the source of life, the heart, the blood, right? I'm rejecting that love. So then as a pinky, I'm purple. A week later, after that, of rejecting all those blood cells, I'm green, I'm rotting, right? Because I have rejected that love. I have caused a separation between me and God, between me and love, between me and life, between me and peace. So as a pinky, that was my choice. Say I keep going. I'm like, you know what? I still want to go live my own pinky life. So the heart is like, well, that green finger is gonna rot the rest of these fingers if I let it just, you know, rot, continue to rot and spread that rot. I am not gonna let the rest of my body rot just because the pinky is choosing not to be a part of the body. I'm not gonna make it hard on the pinky. If the pinky doesn't want to be part of the body, perfect. You know, I'll make it easy on the pinky, cut off the pinky, let it live its own pinky life, right? So then in a way, God is like, you have free will. That is your choice to accept the blood cells, right? That is your choice. If you continue to reject it, that's okay. I will accept your choice. I will respect your choice. I want you to continue to be a part of my body because you're my pinky. But if you don't want to be a part of the body, I'm not going to force you to, you know? So then, as it logically makes sense, you cut off the pinky, and the heart is like, you know what, okay, perfect, I'll let you live your pinky life. And now the pinky is like, you know what, perfect, finally, it's not a my pinky goals or the heart's goals, right? It's just me and myself and I. So now I'm just a rotting pinky, and then obviously I die because I have no source to the heart. I have no connection to the heart, right? To life. And there's no way for me to continue to live if I'm cut off from the rest of the body, right? So I'm just gonna rot and die. Sure, I found myself. I found my pinky dreams, my own desires, etc., etc. But now I'm dead. Now I'm literally dead. See, that's what that quote means. Where sin brought death into the world. And if you continue to think about it from that perspective, it's like, think about it realistically. If a pinky is rotting already, it's harder for it to heal and completely stop rotting and just go back to normal, rather than for you to get a surgery and get it cut off. That's where the whole saying of, it's easy to continue to sin when you're already sinning. It's hard to get out of it, etc., etc. The more you sin, the more you do it, basically, you know? You get bad habits, you build up bad habits. It's exactly like the actual situation of a rotting pinky. If it's already rotting, it's easier for it to continue rotting, because that's what it's been doing. But there's a possibility for it to be able to heal. It just takes a lot of effort, you know? That's why a lot of people choose not to put in that effort, and they choose to continue to live blindly and be like, you know what? Sin doesn't exist. I'm gonna continue to do what I've done because it suits me best, because it pleases me best, you know? When in reality, we're lying to ourselves, because what we all naturally want as human beings is love, peace, safety, etc., which is what God gives us. And if we continue to sin, then we're causing a separation between what we want most and us. You know? We're shooting ourselves in the foot. I had a conversation with my friend the other day, and they gave a great example of this, like in cheating. In cheating, for example, you have been in a super healthy relationship for years now, right? And you never had any insecurities of, are they cheating on me, etc., etc. But say you go to a party by yourself with your girls, you know, and then you see a really cute guy and you're drunk and he's being really friendly and y'all end up kissing, right? Now you've cheated on your partner. You're like, well, technically it was no big deal, you know. I've never cheated before, I'll never do it again. I just won't tell them about it, right? But now you've already sinned against them, technically. Or you did, you know. So now your partner still continues to live really safely in oblivion and bliss. They're like, yes, I still love my partner. Like, they have no clue that you cheated on them. They're living their best life. They're coming home, bringing you flowers, like, you know, like, babe, let's go to dinner, etc. But now inside, you're like, oh, man. They brought me flowers, they're taking me to dinner, etc. And I cheated on them the other day, and they have no clue. Now you feel guilty. And say, even if you're not the guilty person, you're still doing fine. You're like, it's fine, or whatever, you know? You continue to live your best life. But now, say if your partner wants to go to a party, or has already gone to a party, you know, by themselves. Say you're at home watching Netflix or something, and your partner is out with the boys, you know? They come home later, or they haven't come in home, and it's already past the time that they usually would have come back, you know, from hanging out with the boys. Now you're like, it's getting kind of late. And then you see a video on their Snapchat of them at a party, and you're like, they didn't say they were going to that party, you know, etc. And now what's going through your head is, they're cheating on me, you know? Are they cheating on me? So like I said, now if they're at a party and they're out late, and now you're losing your peace of mind, now you're wondering if they're out there cheating on you. Why? Because you cheated on them, even if neither of y'all had ever cheated on each other before, right? So now you're getting those repercussions of that sin. You have shot yourself in the foot. You were the cause for the loss of your peace of mind, for the loss of the health in your relationship, right? And it's like you have to remember that it's a choice of, am I gonna self-sabotage or not, right? Like, are we gonna choose pleasure, or are we gonna choose to do the right thing? Because pleasure and the right thing don't always align. Or it's more like this: pleasure is instant gratification, whereas the right thing is delayed gratification. Sin usually has pleasure. It brings that instant gratification of, yeah, I enjoyed that, I had fun, you know? But then, if we would have done the right thing, we would have been just chilling, you know? I feel fine, whatever. But then later, we're able to feel and experience love in our lives. Actual peace, actual bliss, actual love, rather than some kind of foe of love. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit like, in real terms, if someone grew up with everybody hating them, everybody treating them horribly, you know, everybody in a way sinning against them, treating them horribly, rather than treating them with love, right? Now that person's gonna grow up cold and bitter and distanced, and that's usually what happens, you know. People need therapy, people have trauma, etc. But now they have chosen to hold on to that bitterness, to hold on to those people's sin. Now they're becoming cold and bitter, and in turn also being mean to people later on. Now they are choosing to sin against people. Why? Because that was easier than to learn how to forgive, than to learn how to love, right? It's easier to sin than to choose not to, than to choose to do the right thing, than to choose to live out of love, because love takes a lot of effort. Because love isn't easy. Not always. That's what makes it so beautiful, because the most beautiful, the most amazing things are not always easy to get. They take effort, right? Love is a conscious choice. Forgiveness is a conscious choice. And sometimes people choose not to. They choose to hold on to their grudges. In a way, they are themselves letting themselves rot away internally with all of that bitterness, drowning in their bitterness, when they could choose to live in love. Because it takes a lot of effort to heal those wounds and to allow yourself to learn to be vulnerable again, to actually let love in. So those are the repercussions of sin. It's not I didn't follow the rules. It's not I didn't follow the rules. It's I've shot myself in the foot, you know? I have affected the way that I'm gonna live my life by choosing to sin, or by responding negatively to somebody else's sin. So basically, the avoidance of sin helps to free ourselves from the bitterness of this world, from the bitterness of others that are probably living in sin. But the world has lied to us and said to us that it's a made-up concept that is in order to shame us, in order to guilt us, in order to control us. Which is funny, because in a way, the acknowledgement of sin, that sin exists, helps to dignify us by us choosing not to do so. It helps to dignify us by us learning to accept God's redemption and being like, you know what? Thank you for allowing me to live in love, you know? It's like a Uno reverse card, you know? Like, sin begins to control people by the world tricking people into thinking that it doesn't exist. Now people are living in bitterness, they're living in anger, they're living in loneliness, etc., lack of peace, because they're choosing to sin, because they think it doesn't exist. Now sin is controlling them. Whereas society tells us that the concept, imaginary idea of sin was created in order to control us in the first place, right? That's why we have to acknowledge that it exists in order to avoid it. That way it doesn't control us. That's the point. Which kind of brings me back to the main point of we're so often taught that it's something to guilt, something to shame us, etc. But in reality, it's the acknowledgement of it in one another. It's not a call out. I mean, it really does come off as a call out sometimes when we don't use our words properly, but it's not a call out. It's not a, oh, you're a horrible person because you did that. No, it's a, I know that that's going to have some repercussions for you. And I want you to be able to live in love. I want you to be able to live in bliss, in joy, in peace. I want you to have everything that you need. I want you to have everything that you need to thrive properly, right? And in order for you to do that to your fullest extent, I know that sin is not supposed to be a part of your life, kind of thing. And so I'm inviting you to try to avoid it. However, people don't usually use those terminologies. They're like, oh, don't do that. That's a sin. You're messed up, you know, whatever. That's the kind of terminology that people tend to use because they don't communicate well. But in reality, it comes from a place of love, which is the part that we tend to not see, the part that we tend to overlook because it takes too much effort to look into it, you know? In reality, it's a, I live in bliss, I live in joy, I live in peace, only because I have learned how to avoid sin for the most part. And back in the day, when that was so typical and that was such a large part of my life, I didn't live in bliss. I was depressed, I was suicidal, I was angry, I was bitter, I was lonely, etc., right? So now that I have avoided that and I have come into the life that I enjoy much more than the one that I used to live, it's kind of in a way an invitation to everybody else rather than a call out. So that's the main point, that it comes from a place of love.